Today, I'm going to answer 3 very common questions I get when I'm preparing to sell someone's home. If you have any questions of your own that I didn't mention in this video, I am going to be making multiple parts to this video, so drop them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them in the following videos. Also, if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. Really helps support the channel and motivates me to make more content for you guys. We did just hit 100 subscribers, so I would really like to hit maybe around 1,000 in the next couple of months. So again, if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. It's really appreciated. A top question I get from sellers is, how much does it cost to sell my home? Now, this is going to vary depending on a lot of different factors, so just keep that in mind when I go through this list. But overall, you should budget for about 10%. That's made up of pretty much 4 different buckets, and the first one we're going to talk about is minor updates and home prep prior to listing the home. This is going to come out to roughly 1% of the total sales price, and it's going to include things like painting, flooring, any recommendations that the realtor makes before listing the home, and anything that you maybe want to do before listing the home. Some people really don't care to do anything like update wise. They just want to list the home as is, and that's perfectly fine. And there's some people that have a lot of pride when it comes to their home, and they want to make sure it's presented well, and obviously that will help them get top dollar. So things like that, really roughly 1% of the total sales price. Number 2 is seller concessions and repairs. These are things that the buyer finds after their home inspection that they request to be done or request a credit for. So seller concession just means, say there's an item like the roof that needs to be repaired in a couple of years, and the buyer offered $250,000 for the home. They might ask for a $5,000 credit from the buyer or from the seller at closing to knock the price down a little bit, because they found out the roof was a little bit older than they thought and it might need a repair or a replacement in the next couple of years. Another thing is repair cost. So as a seller, you're not required to do any repairs, especially if you use an as-is contract. But if there are some small things that might hold up the buyer from being able to get insurance, then it might make sense for the seller to, fix that TPR valve on the water heater or fix the double taps on the electrical panel. These are minor repairs that are just easily fixed and will make the transaction and the closing a lot smoother. And also, they just make sense to do because you're not going to cancel a deal because a buyer wants you to fix double taps on an electrical panel, because then the next buyer that comes in is probably going to request the same thing anyways. So the only way to sell the home is if you find a cash buyer who's willing to pay the same price as a conventional or a finance buyer. The third cost is closing cost, and this can be 2 to 3% depending on the title company you use, and also if you have a title insurance policy already or not. Now this is pretty much a fixed cost because you can't really get around paying all these. You're going to pay your title insurance premium. You're going to pay your title fees for the service of the title company. You're going to pay the doc stamps on the deed to the county, and you're going to pay the property taxes to the county. The property taxes can vary depending on when you sell the home. For instance, if you sell the home in March, you're going to pay less of the property taxes for that year because you're only going to pay from January, February, and the days you lived in the house in March, compared to if you lived in the home until November and then sold it. You're going to pay, obviously, January through November of property taxes. That'll be, like I said, included in your closing cost. It'll probably be around 2 to 3% total for your closing cost. And then you have your realtor fees, which is the fourth bucket, and that's going to be roughly 4.5% to 6%, depending on the service and the quality of realtor that you use. Overall, I would estimate about a 10% budget for selling your home. If you would like to see a full net sheet breaking down the cost, specifically all the closing costs and realtor fees based on certain sales prices of your home, reach out to me directly or drop a comment below, and I'll be sure to reach out and provide that for you. Question 2 is, should I make repairs or updates prior to listing my home? Now, in my opinion, this will heavily depend on the current condition of your home, the overall condition, and the real estate market. Also, another factor will be, how much do you want for the home? Now, it's going to depend and vary, on your specific home, but there are certain examples that I can give you that may make sense, and there's a little bit of common sense that comes into this. If you have a fixer upper that you're probably looking for a cash buyer because maybe the roof's really old or the AC is really old or there's a bunch of things wrong with the home or it needs a lot of updates, and you're going to pretty much be looking for someone to come in and do those updates for you, and you just want to get rid of it. It may not make sense to do flooring or do paint or update the countertops because you're probably, if most of the home needs to be redone, that buyer is just going to come in and redo it all anyway. Now, that is true in that case, but if you have a really updated home and maybe the only thing that needs to be done is like paint because you painted a color that you really like but may not appeal to the masses, then I would suggest painting the home because that will likely increase the value because you'll have more more buyers. One, because the home is updated, move-in ready, and two, now the color is appealing to most people. And when I say that, I mean like a gray or a white, like pretty much following the trends of the current market. Number three is you should ask your realtor what update or what repairs you should do to the home prior to listing it. Now, this is going to most likely be things that are going to come up on the 4-point inspection. So the 4-point inspection includes the roof, air conditioning, plumbing, and electrical. If you know of any things that need to be done to the home, I would make your realtor aware of these so they can make a recommendation. If maybe there's some shingles missing on the roof, or there's double taps on the electrical panel, or there's a problem with the water heater, make your realtor aware of this so they can make suggestions if it's going to be required to be repaired or not by the insurance company. Because without insurance, a financed buyer cannot close on the home. And obviously those examples were specific. Obviously there's going to be other things that you should do no matter what the condition of your home is, like increase the curb appeal and, overall increase the cleanliness of the home and the presentation of the home. When it comes to the more specific things to increase value, you really need to get a good eye and good look into the comparables to understand, what makes sense versus what doesn't. The final question of this video is what happens if the appraised value comes in below the purchase price? Now, there's probably three scenarios here that are likely. So in this market, we're seeing a lot of buyers put in appraisal guarantees with the contract. Pretty much what that means is they're stating they're going to give a specific amount over the appraised value if it does not meet the purchase price. So for example, if we have a home under contract for $300,000 and the buyer offers a $10,000 appraisal guarantee, if the appraisal comes in at $290,000, that means the seller is going to receive the full $300,000. If the appraisal comes in below that $290,000, so say $280,000, and they're still going to offer the $10,000 over that, so they're going to get $290,000, but the seller is actually losing out on $10,000 compared to the contracted price. So at that point, depending on the seller, depending on the buyer, depending on the negotiations in between, the seller could agree to the $290,000 because they understand that unless they get a cash offer or someone willing to offer $20,000 over appraisal, they're probably not going to get better than $290,000. Now, this is obviously going to be a decision from the listing agent and the seller. Discussing. Do we think we can get a cash offer over $290,000? Do we think we can get an appraisal guarantee over $10,000? That's really what comes into that decision. It also depends on the size of the gap. Now, it would be completely different if maybe the appraisal came in at $250,000, it would be like $50,000 under the appraised value or the purchase price. In that case, I don't think a seller would agree to that low. Only getting $260,000 for the home when you include the $10,000 appraisal guarantee. So there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen, but to keep it simple, a lot of buyers are putting appraisal guarantees in their contracts, which guarantees a certain amount of money over the appraised value if necessary. That's one option if an appraisal comes in low. The second option, if there's no appraisal guarantee already in the contract, is for the buyer and seller to just renegotiate from the appraised value. So if the appraisal came in at $270,000 and the home's worth $300,000, or the home is under contract for $300,000, they might come to an agreement at $285,000, halfway in between. The buyer and seller agree on $285,000 and they close at that price, which would make sense. That's a pretty strong offer. The seller is getting $15,000 over appraised value, and the buyer is only paying $15,000 over what the home is worth. which is obviously never great, but in this market, it's kind of, something that needs to be done, because especially if you have a really nice home and a really updated home, this in this market, it's going to get a lot of offers. And to be competitive, people are doing this because they know the appraisals haven't caught up yet. Now, a third option, if an appraisal comes in low, is a reconsideration of value. So this pretty much happens when a buyer's agent or a listing agent think the appraiser made a mistake or didn't use comparables that they may have used to value the home, and it's pretty much just making a recommendation to the appraiser to check out these comps, or you missed this in this comparable, you made this adjustment when I believe you shouldn't have because of this reason. And that it's pretty much just a way to go back to the appraiser and have them reconsider the appraisal based on you presenting facts and other comparables that maybe they haven't used. Another key factor in these negotiations when an appraisal comes in low is understanding the seller's motivations and the buyer's motivations. Why is the buyer buying a home? Why is the seller selling their home? Because there's a certain amount of leverage on each side of this. If a seller needs to sell the home because they're closing on another home that they're relocating to, or a buyer, vice versa for the buyer is selling their home currently and it closes in a week and they need a new home to move into, obviously they're going to be more enticed to, come up on the purchase price or come up on the appraisal gap guarantee. So these are all things to understand, and your agent should understand and, realize when they have leverage, while still being a decent human being, of course, but it's still good to represent your client in this way and, really understand the situation in the full capacity. That wraps up part 1 of this new series. If you have any questions yourself, feel free to reach out to me at 352-290-6841 or drop it in the comments below and I might just answer it in the next video. Also, like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you're informed when part 2 is posted. I also post other content monthly of property tours and other informational videos about real estate. So again, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated.